Imagine stepping out onto this dry, rocky battlefield and realizing you're up against an ancient walking tank.
Oh, man. It's just terrifying to even picture.
Right. I mean, we're talking over 120 pounds of bronze scale armor, wielding a weapon so heavy a normal person couldn't even lift it.
Yeah, exactly.
So today, we're tearing down the sanitized, the children's Sunday school version of the ultimate underdog story, David versus Goliath. But before we get into this fascinating history, I want to welcome you in and offer a warm, divine blessing for your day and for your entire week ahead.
Absolutely.
May you find clarity, peace, and real purpose in whatever challenges you're facing right now. We're so glad you're here with us on this deep dive.
It's wonderful to be here. And, that image of the walking tank is really the perfect place to start. Because when you strip away the cartoonish versions we often grow up with, you're left with this highly complex case study.
Right. And that's the mission of this deep dive. We're looking at the rigorous analytical side of this historical event, using the notes from the Holman and NAA study Bibles covering 1 Samuel chapter 17.
Yeah, the study notes provide such great context.
They really do. I mean, we're looking at cutting-edge ancient military technology, intense psychological warfare, and honestly, a masterclass in asymmetrical strategy. But none of that makes sense without the geography, right?
No, the geography is everything here.
We're in the Valley of Gila, which isn't just a random patch of desert. It's a terrifying geographical bottleneck.
It's a critical choke point. So to visualize the stakes here, picture the layout of the region. You have the Philistines, right? They're this powerful coastal people, and they're pushing aggressively inland.
Like an invasion force.
Exactly. They've marched through the lowland valleys, an area known as the Shephelah, and set up camp. On the opposite ridge of the valley, you have King Saul and the Israelite army. And the Valley of Elah sits right between them, acting as this natural gateway.
So, if the Philistine army punches through this specific valley...
They have a direct, unimpeded path straight up into the central mountains.
Wow. And if they get into those mountains, they directly threaten Bethlehem, Hebron, and most importantly, King Saul's capital city, Gibeah.
Yeah, it's game over.
Right. For the Israelites, this is an existential line in the sand. If they lose this valley, their nation is effectively severed. So the tension is already at a boiling point.
Oh, for sure. The armies are camped on opposite hills, just staring at each other.
And then out steps the reason the Israelite army sits completely paralyzed for 40 straight days. Let's talk about the sheer physical and, well, the technological reality of Goliath.
Right, so first we have to look at his size. The historical texts give us a slightly varied picture, depending on the manuscript you're reading.
Okay, what do they say?
If you look at the older Dead Sea Scrolls, Goliath is listed at roughly 2 meters tall, which is about 6'9".
That's a big guy.
Huge. But if you look at later standardized Hebrew texts, the Masoretic texts, he's listed at nearly 3 meters tall, pushing 9 feet 9 inches.
That is just wild.
It is. But truthfully, while the height difference was a massive intimidation factor, the real terror wasn't just his genetics. It was his technology.
The armor. I mean, this is where the historical context completely reframes the story for me. Goliath isn't just a big guy. He represents the absolute pinnacle of military engineering for his era.
Oh, without a doubt. He's wearing bronze-scale armor weighing between 55 and 60 kilograms.
Wait, so
That's over 120 pounds of bronze just on his torso.
Wow, just on his chest and back.
Yeah. Scale armor is made of individual overlapping bronze plates sewn onto leather, so it provides flexibility while being nearly impenetrable to slashing weapons.
Okay.
And he's also wearing bronze shin guards to protect his legs.
It's literally like putting a modern soldier in a powered exoskeleton suit. And then there's the weapon itself. He's carrying a spear with a massive iron tip.
Yeah, the text notes that just the iron tip of the spear weighed about 7 kilograms, or roughly 15 pounds.
Let's put that in practical terms. That is the equivalent of attaching a sledgehammer head to the end of a javelin.
Exactly. You don't just poke someone with that.
No. The kinetic energy alone would crush an opponent's shield and the arm holding it. And the specific metal here, iron, that's a crucial historical shift, isn't it?
It absolutely is. We're looking right at the messy transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. Bronze is an alloy. It's heavy, but it can shatter under extreme force, and it loses its edge relatively quickly.
But iron is different.
Right. Iron, once forged correctly, is harder, holds a lethal edge much longer, and doesn't shatter the same way. And in this specific era, the Philistines held a strict monopoly on iron.
They literally controlled the blacksmiths and the forges, so the Israelites couldn't even manufacture their own iron weapons without going through the Philistines.
Yeah, they were completely outmatched logistically.
So Goliath is like this walking flex of geopolitical dominance. He's the ultimate weapon, and he walks out into the valley demanding a one-on-one fight.
Which was a standard ancient practice, champion warfare.
Right. Instead of two armies colliding and suffering massive casualties on both sides, each army sends out their absolute best warrior.
Yeah, the winner takes all. It's highly efficient and prevents mass slaughter, but it requires both sides to agree to the terms.
But Saul and his men look at this armored tank, and they realize they have absolutely nothing in their inventory that can match him.
Not a thing. No one has the size, and no one has the iron technology.
So for 40 days, it turns into this grinding, humiliating psychological siege. Every morning, every evening, Goliath comes out and taunts them. You can imagine the morale just eroding away.
Oh, completely. The seasoned professional soldiers are fighting a conventional war in their minds. And in a conventional war, Goliath is unbeatable.
They're paralyzed by technological superiority. The establishment military machine has completely stalled out.
Which means the solution to this standoff couldn't possibly come from within the military. It had to come from completely outside the system.
Enter David. But he doesn't show up in a chariot or with a sword, does he?
No, he shows up as a delivery boy.
It's one of the most striking details in the narrative, because ancient armies didn't have modern logistics or centralized supply chains. They didn't have, crates of MREs waiting for them.
Right. Soldiers relied on their families back home to literally bring them food on the front lines. So David's father, Jesse, gives him a very mundane, practical task.
Just a normal chore.
Exactly. He tells him to walk from Bethlehem to the battlefield, which is a trek of about 24 kilometers or roughly 15 miles.
And he's carrying an ephah of roasted grain, which is roughly 40 pounds or about 20 liters, plus 10 loaves of bread for his 3 older brothers who are serving in the army, and 10 cheeses for their commanding officer.
Yeah, he's essentially the camp's cheese delivery guy.
I love that so much. It highlights how utterly disconnected David is from the military machine.
Totally. He arrives at the camp right as the armies are taking their positions and shouting the morning war cry.
And he leaves his heavy supplies with the baggage keeper, runs to the front line to find his brothers, and that's when he hears Goliath giving his daily terrifying speech.
And this is where we get such a brilliant, relatable human moment.
Yes, because David hears the taunts, and he starts asking the soldiers around him, like, what's the reward for killing this giant? And his oldest brother, Eliab, overhears this and absolutely loses his temper.
Oh, he goes off on him. Eliab aggressively accuses David of being arrogant, of abandoning the family sheep, and of just coming down to the battlefield to watch the bloodshed like it's a spectator sport.
It's a fascinating psychological reaction, really.
It is. Think about the dynamics at play. Here is Eliab, a professional soldier, terrified to step foot in that valley, being casually questioned by his younger brother who smells like sheep and cheese.
Yeah, Eliab's anger is clearly fueled by his own fear and insecurity.
Absolutely. It's a deeply human defense mechanism.
Which proves family dynamics really don't change across centuries. I mean, you're literally on the front lines of a war that will decide the fate of your nation. A heavily armored giant is threatening to enslave your people, and you're still getting into a petty argument with your older brother who thinks you're just an annoying kid.
It's so true. But David just brushes it off because he's highly focused on the bounty.
Right. He finds out that whoever defeats Goliath will receive vast riches, the king's daughter in marriage, and total tax exemption for his father's house in Israel.
And total tax exemption is a powerful motivator.
I would say so.
So word gets around the camp that this young shepherd is talking confidently, and he eventually gets an interview with King Saul. Now, Saul assesses the situation purely on military terms.
Right. He looks at David's lack of armor, his lack of size, and his lack of conventional training, and just dismisses him. Saul tells him, you're just a boy, and this man has been a warrior since his youth.
But David presents an incredibly unconventional resume. He doesn't talk about military drills or formations. He talks about his flock.
The lions and the bears.
Yes. He tells Saul that when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb, he would go after it, strike it, and rescue the lamb right out of its mouth. And if the animal turned on him, he would grab it by its hair and strike it down.
Which completely reframes the narrative. David is explaining his hand-to-hand combat experience in high-stress, life-or-death situations. But more importantly, he's revealing his unique mindset.
Exactly. The entire Israelite army looks at Goliath and sees an invincible military asset. David looks at Goliath and sees a predator.
He just sees a bear on two legs.
That's all is him.
He strips away the intimidation of the bronze and the iron. To David, this giant is just another wild animal threatening the flock. He tells Saul, "The Lord who delivered me from the claws of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine."
And Saul finally relents, but he still can't let go of his conventional establishment thinking.
Because he tries to project his own methods onto David. He tries to dress David in his royal armor.
Right, he puts a heavy bronze helmet on David's head and a coat of mail on his chest.
And David straps on the sword, tries to walk around, and realizes it's completely restricting his movement. He tells Saul, "I can't go in these, for I'm not used to them," so he takes them off.
He rejects the king's armor completely.
And this isn't just a wardrobe change, it's the turning point of the entire strategy. If David wears the armor and takes a sword, he's agreeing to fight the battle on Goliath's terms.
Yeah, he'd just be a smaller, slower, much weaker, heavy infantryman. He'd be playing to Goliath's exact strengths.
Exactly. So instead, David grabs his shepherd's staff, walks down to the wadi, the dry riverbed at the bottom of the valley, and selects 5 smooth stones.
He puts them in his shepherd's pouch, takes his sling in his hand, and walks out to face the champion.
Now, we really need to pause and explain the mechanics here, because when modern readers hear the word sling, they almost always picture a child's toy.
Right, a wooden Y shape with a rubber band. A slingshot.
Yeah, but that's a huge misconception, isn't it?
Oh, massive. An ancient shepherd's sling was a martial weapon of devastating, lethal power. It didn't use elasticity, it used centrifugal force.
So how did it actually work?
It consisted of a leather pouch with 2 long cords. A skilled slinger would place a dense stone in the pouch, loop one cord around their finger, and grip the other. They would spin it rapidly to build massive momentum, and then release the gripped cord at the precise microsecond to launch the projectile.
And the physics behind it are just staggering. A skilled slinger could hurl a stone the size of a tennis ball at speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour.
100 miles per hour.
That is insane.
And we're talking about dense, heavy river stones. When a dense projectile is launched at that velocity, the transfer of kinetic energy upon impact is immense. The stopping power of an ancient sling was roughly equivalent to a bullet fired from a modern .45 caliber handgun.
Wow. So let's connect this for you listening. Saul and the army were trying to fight a heavy infantryman on his own terms. David steps into the valley and completely changes the game to artillery. It's the ancient equivalent of bringing a sniper rifle to a sword fight. Goliath wants a close-quarters grappling match where his mass and armor win. David has absolutely no intention of letting him get within 50 feet.
It's the textbook definition of asymmetrical warfare. You leverage your unique mobile strength against your opponent's slow, heavily armored vulnerability.
Because Goliath's heavy armor made him incredibly slow, right?
Yeah, and it restricted his peripheral vision.
Yeah.
His bronze helmet likely had a T-shaped opening exposing his face. He is built for a specific type of brutal close-quarters combat that David completely bypasses.
The psychological clash right before the physical strike is incredible. Goliath sees David walking towards him with a staff, and he's deeply insulted. He yells, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And he curses David by his Philistine gods.
But notice, Goliath is confused. He genuinely doesn't understand the threat. He sees the stick, but his conventional military mind doesn't register the concealed sling as a primary weapon.
That is such a key point. And David responds with a theological declaration that essentially announces the end of conventional warfare. He says, "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of armies whom you have defied."
He announces that the whole world will know that the Lord doesn't save with sword and spear.
And the action that follows is incredibly fast. The text says that as the Philistines moved closer to attack, David ran quickly toward the battle line. He didn't retreat. He closed the distance to improve his accuracy.
Right. He reached into his pouch, slung the stone, and struck the Philistine right on his exposed forehead.
A 100-mile-per-hour fastball delivering handgun-level kinetic energy directly to the skull. Goliath falls. But there's a fascinating poetic detail about how he falls, isn't there?
Yes, the text specifically notes that Goliath fell face down to the earth.
Which means something specific to the ancient reader.
Exactly. For an ancient reader, this image is loaded with cultural memory. It perfectly mirrors a previous historical event where the statue of the Philistine god Dagon mysteriously fell face down before the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, wow.
The physical collapse of their undefeated champion represents the spiritual and cultural collapse of their entire belief system.
It's total poetic justice.
Mm.
And to prove his point that God doesn't need conventional weapons, David doesn't even have a sword of his own. He runs over, draws Goliath's own massive sword out of its sheath, and uses it to cut off the giant's head.
And when the Philistine army sees their invincible, ironclad champion dead on the ground, the psychological warfare flips instantly.
The panic is total and immediate.
The Philistines break rank and flee. The Israelite army, suddenly emboldened by this shocking turn of events, surges forward with a massive shout. They chase the Philistines all the way out of the valley, pushing them back to the gates of their major cities, Gath and Ekron.
It's a complete rout. Now, the aftermath of this battle leaves us with some really fascinating historical footnotes. Goliath is dead, but the psychological warfare David used doesn't just stop in the valley.
No, he takes it a step further.
Right. David actually takes a gruesome piece of evidence to send a political message. He takes Goliath's head to Jerusalem. Now, wait a minute. Jerusalem wasn't the capital of Israel yet, right?
Correct. At this specific time in history, Jerusalem was still a heavily fortified stronghold controlled by the Jebusites, a Canaanite people.
So why bring it there?
Well, the historical analysis suggests David brought the head to the region around Jerusalem to intentionally intimidate the Jebusites. It was a visceral, highly visible warning like, look what just happened to the greatest warrior of the Philistine army. You're next.
It's foreshadowing his later conquest of the city. That is an intense, calculated political move.
It really is.
But the historical sources also give us some incredible archaeological proof that grounds this story in reality, don't they? This isn't just a myth. There is actual dirt and pottery backing it up.
This is a thrilling detail for anyone interested in archaeology. At the ancient site of Gath, which is modern-day Tel Asafi in Israel, excavators uncovered an inscription on a piece of pottery dating to roughly the same era as this battle.
Okay.
And the inscription features a name that is linguistically strikingly similar to Goliath.
That's amazing.
Now, to be clear, it doesn't mean it's a receipt or a name tag belonging to the specific Goliath of the Bible.
Right, right.
But it proves beyond a doubt that the name and its specific Indo-European linguistic roots were entirely authentic to that exact Philistine culture and time period. It confirms the historical memory of the text is incredibly accurate.
I love when archaeology lines up to give us a clear window into the mechanics of the past. But before we finish, I have to bring up a strange textual puzzle at the very end of the chapter.
Oh, yes, I know what you're going to ask.
Because right as David goes out to fight, Saul turns to his military commander, Abner, and asks, whose son is this youth? And Abner says he doesn't know.
Hold on, I'm confused here.
It seems like a contradiction, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Earlier in 1 Samuel, we're explicitly told that David was already hired to play the harp for Saul in his court to calm his nerves. He was his armor bearer. How on earth does the king look at him after this battle and not know who he is? Did the author just mess up the timeline?
It's a famous puzzle, but historical analysis offers two very practical resolutions. The first theory deals with Saul's deteriorating mental state.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The text heavily documents that Saul was suffering from severe psychological torment and paranoia, likely what we might categorize today as severe cognitive decline or trauma.
So he was losing his grip.
Yes. In that fractured mental state, he might recognize David's face vaguely, but he genuinely can't recall his specific lineage.
Okay, that makes sense if you consider someone under extreme psychological distress. But what's the second theory?
The second theory is purely bureaucratic, and it ties back to David's motivation.
Reward.
Exactly. Remember the reward Saul offered: total tax exemption for the victor's family. To fulfill a royal decree of that magnitude, Saul isn't just making small talk with his commander. He's doing administrative diligence.
Oh, I see.
He needs to establish the exact legal lineage of this boy's father, Jesse, to formally enact the tax exemption. He isn't asking, who is that kid? He's essentially asking, what is the specific legal house and clan of that boy's father so we can draft the decree?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. It's the ancient equivalent of asking for his tax ID number so they can file the paperwork. Make sure we get his father's exact name on the royal decree. It completely resolves the tension in the narrative.
It does. It shows a king trying to maintain administrative order and fulfill a massive public promise in the chaotic, immediate aftermath of an unbelievable victory.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, the detail that keeps sticking in my mind is that quiet moment in Saul's tent. David putting on the king's heavy bronze armor, trying to take a few steps, and then realizing it was going to get him killed.
Yeah, it was a pivotal realization.
He had the self-awareness and the courage to take it off and fight the battle his own way, using the unconventional tools he had mastered in the fields. It leaves me with a final, provocative thought for you listening right now.
That's a great question to ask ourselves.
Sometimes the very things that make us feel unqualified or unprotected in a traditional sense are exactly what force us to use our unique strengths. We often look at the massive challenges in front of us and assume we have to fight them using the world's standard methods. We assume we need the specific title, the pedigree, or the heavy conventional armor to succeed.
But we usually don't.
Exactly. What royal armor are you trying to wear in your own life right now that actually doesn't fit you? What expectations or standard procedures are slowing you down when you really just need to pick up your own sling and 5 smooth stones?
Recognizing our own unique tools is often the most critical step in overcoming what seems completely insurmountable.
It truly is. Well, thank you all for joining us on this journey through the Valley of Itala today. We hope this deep dive gave you some real historical insight, helped explain the why and the how behind the history, and maybe gave you a little courage for your own battles. Until next time, God blesses all the listeners. Take care, everyone.